a day that changed the world. September 11th, 2001. On that quiet morning in the United States, millions of people started their day like any other. Office workers rushed to their desks. Travelers boarded planes. Families said goodbye before heading to work and school. But within hours, the world would change forever. 2 airplanes crashed into the towers of the World Trade Center, another hit the Pentagon, and a 4th crashed in Pennsylvania. Nearly 3,000 people lost their lives. Behind these attacks was a man whose name soon became known across the globe, Osama bin Laden. But how did a wealthy Saudi-born man become the leader of one of the most infamous terrorist organizations in history? This is the story of his life, his rise, his ideology, and the global manhunt that lasted nearly a decade. Chapter 1: A Life of Wealth and Privilege. The story of Osama bin Laden begins far from the battlefields and conflicts that would later define his life. He was born on March 10, 1957, in the capital city of Riyadh, located in Saudi Arabia. At the time, Saudi Arabia was becoming one of the wealthiest countries in the world because of its rapidly growing oil industry. Osama was born into an extremely wealthy and influential family. His father, Mohammed bin Laden, was one of the most successful businessmen in the Middle East. Originally from Yemen, Mohammed bin Laden moved to Saudi Arabia with very little money. Through hard work, ambition, and strong relationships with the Saudi royal family, he built a massive construction empire. He founded the Saudi bin Laden Group, which quickly became one of the most powerful construction companies in the region. The company received huge contracts from the Saudi government, including projects related to the expansion and renovation of important religious sites such as the Masjid al-Haram and the Al-Masjid an-Nabawi. Because of this success, the bin Laden family lived a life of great luxury. They owned large homes, traveled frequently, and had access to the best education and opportunities available. Osama was one of more than 50 children in the large bin Laden family. Growing up in such a big family meant he had many brothers and sisters, but it also meant that competition and expectations were very high. When Osama was still young, tragedy struck the family. In 1967, his father died in a plane crash. This event deeply affected the family, but the bin Laden business empire continued to grow under the leadership of Osama's older brothers. Even after his father's death, the family remained extremely wealthy and influential in Saudi society. As a child, Osama was known to be quiet, serious, and deeply religious. Unlike some wealthy children who enjoyed a carefree lifestyle, Osama was often described as disciplined and reserved. He was strongly influenced by Islamic teachings and spent much of his time studying religion. For his education, Osama attended some of the best schools in Riyadh. Later, he moved to the city of Jeddah to continue his studies. There, he enrolled at King Abdulaziz University, one of the most respected universities in the country. At the university, Osama studied subjects related to economics and business administration. His family expected him to eventually take part in the management of their massive construction company. However, his time at university also exposed him to new political and religious ideas. During the 1970s, many Muslim intellectuals and activists were discussing the political future of the Muslim world. Some believed that Muslim societies had become weak because they had moved away from strict religious principles. These ideas had a strong influence on young students, including Osama. At King Abdulaziz University, Osama met teachers and scholars who promoted a strict interpretation of Islam and criticized Western influence in Muslim countries. These discussions deeply shaped his worldview. Although Osama bin Laden grew up surrounded by wealth and privilege, his interests slowly began to move away from business and luxury. Instead, he became increasingly interested in religion, politics, and the idea of defending Muslim lands. At this stage in his life, no one could have predicted that this quiet young man from a wealthy Saudi family would eventually become one of the most infamous figures in modern history. Yet the events that would transform his life were already beginning to unfold. Soon, a war in a distant country would pull him into a world of conflict that would shape the rest of his life. Chapter 2: The Afghan War and Radicalization. In the late 1970s, a major global event began that would completely change the life of Osama bin Laden. This event was the beginning of the Soviet-Afghan War, one of the most important conflicts of the Cold War period. In December 1979, the Soviet Union sent its military forces into Afghanistan to support the communist government that was struggling to stay in power. Many Afghan people strongly opposed this foreign intervention. Soon, armed resistance groups formed to fight against the Soviet army. These fighters became known as the Mujahideen. The war quickly became a symbol of resistance for many Muslims around the world. News spread that Afghanistan was under foreign occupation, and thousands of volunteers from different countries traveled there to join the fight. Among those who felt inspired to support the Afghan fighters was Osama bin Laden. At that time, Osama was a young man in his early 20s. He came from a wealthy family and had access to large financial resources. Instead of staying in the comfort of his life in Saudi Arabia, he decided to travel to Afghanistan to support the Mujahideen. However, Osama did not immediately become a frontline fighter. In the early years, his main role was providing financial and logistical support. Using money from his family and connections, he helped fund supplies, weapons, and facilities for the fighters. He also worked with Abdullah Azzam, a religious scholar who encouraged Muslims from around the world to support the Afghan resistance. Together, they helped organize networks that brought foreign volunteers into Afghanistan. To support these efforts, they created an organization called Maktab al-Khidmat. This group helped recruit fighters, raise funds, and provide training for those who wanted to join the war against the Soviet forces. For Osama, this period was extremely important. It was during the Afghan War that he built relationships with fighters from many different countries. These connections later became the foundation for the international network he would eventually create. Over time, Osama also began to take a more active role in the conflict. He helped build training camps and defensive positions in mountainous areas of Afghanistan. He also participated in some battles alongside the Mujahideen fighters. The war was brutal and lasted nearly 10 years. Thousands of people lost their lives, and Afghanistan was heavily damaged by the fighting. But by the late 1980s, the Soviet Union began to withdraw its forces. In 1989, the Soviet army finally left Afghanistan. Many people around the world viewed this as a major victory for the Afghan resistance. For many fighters, the war had proven that a determined guerrilla force could defeat a powerful superpower. For Osama bin Laden, the war had a powerful psychological impact. He believed that faith, dedication, and armed struggle had defeated one of the most powerful nations in the world. This belief strengthened his confidence and shaped his future goals. He began to think that similar methods could be used in other conflicts involving Muslim countries. The Afghan War also gave him something even more valuable than experience: a network of loyal fighters and supporters who shared his ideology. These connections would soon lead to the creation of a new organization that would change global history. Within a few years, Osama bin Laden would transform these networks into a group that the world would come to know as Al-Qaeda. And with that, a new and dangerous chapter of his life was about to begin. Chapter 3: The Birth of Al-Qaeda. After the end of the Soviet-Afghan War, the situation in Afghanistan changed dramatically. The Soviet army had withdrawn, and many foreign fighters who had come to support the Afghan resistance began returning to their home countries. But for Osama bin Laden, the end of the war did not mean the end of his mission. In fact, it marked the beginning of a new phase in his life. During the Afghan War, Osama had built strong relationships with fighters from many different parts of the Muslim world. These fighters shared similar ideas and experiences. They believed that their success in Afghanistan showed that determined fighters could defeat even the most powerful military forces. Osama began thinking about how these fighters could remain connected and organized even after the war ended. In 1988, while the conflict in Afghanistan was still continuing, Osama and a small group of his close allies decided to create a new organization. This organization would unite experienced fighters and prepare them for future conflicts. They named the group Al-Qaeda. The name Al-Qaeda means the base. The idea behind this name was to create a base or foundation for a global network of fighters who shared the same ideology. Unlike earlier groups that focused only on one country or one war, Al-Qaeda was designed to operate internationally. Its goal was to connect militants from many different regions and organize them into a coordinated network. The organization began as a small and secretive group. At first, it mainly kept records of fighters who had participated in the Afghan War. These records included their experience, skills, and contacts. This information helped create a network that could be activated in future conflicts. Al-Qaeda also focused on training new fighters. In different parts of Afghanistan, training camps were established where recruits learned military tactics, survival skills, and ideological teachings. Many of the people who joined these camps were young men who believed they were defending their religion and communities. They came from countries across the Middle East, North Africa, and Asia. During this time, Afghanistan was still politically unstable. Different groups fought for control of the country after the Soviet withdrawal. This instability allowed organizations like Al-Qaeda to continue operating in remote areas. For Osama bin Laden, Afghanistan became the center of his growing network. However, his activities soon attracted attention from governments around the world. Many countries became concerned about the growing influence of militant groups that had formed during the Afghan War. In the early 1990s, Osama left Afghanistan and returned to Saudi Arabia. At first, he was welcomed as someone who had helped support the Afghan resistance. But tensions soon began to grow between him and the Saudi government. Osama became increasingly critical of political decisions made by the Saudi leadership. This disagreement would later lead to major conflicts that pushed Osama further into opposition against several governments. Eventually, Osama left Saudi Arabia and moved to Sudan in the early 1990s. While living there, he continued expanding the activities of Al-Qaeda. During these years, the organization grew stronger. It developed financial networks, training programs, and connections with militants in several countries. By the mid-1990s, Al-Qaeda had transformed from a small group of war veterans into a much larger and more organized international network. Osama bin Laden had successfully created what he originally imagined, a global base for militant activity. And as Al-Qaeda grew stronger, its focus began to shift toward new targets and larger operations. The next phase of Osama's life would bring him into direct conflict with one of the most powerful countries in the world, the United States. Chapter 4: Conflict with the United States. During the early 1990s, the relationship between Osama bin Laden and several governments began to change dramatically. While he had once been seen by some as a supporter of the Afghan resistance during the Soviet-Afghan War, his views and actions gradually brought him into open conflict with powerful countries, especially the United States. One of the biggest turning points came during the Gulf War. In 1990, the country of Iraq, led by Saddam Hussein, invaded the neighboring country of Kuwait. This invasion created a major international crisis. To push Iraqi forces out of Kuwait, a large international military coalition was formed. The coalition was led by the United States and supported by many other countries. As part of the operation, American troops were deployed in Saudi Arabia. For the Saudi government, allowing foreign troops was seen as necessary to protect the country from possible attack. However, Osama bin Laden strongly opposed this decision. He believed that Saudi Arabia, which contains Islam's most sacred cities such as Mecca and Medina, should not host foreign military forces. Osama even offered to organize fighters from the Afghan War to defend Saudi Arabia instead. But the Saudi government rejected his proposal and continued working with the United States. This decision angered Osama bin Laden deeply. He began openly criticizing the Saudi leadership and the presence of American troops in the region. Because of his growing criticism and political activity, tensions between Osama and the Saudi government increased. Eventually, his passport was taken away, and his influence within the country began to decline. In the early 1990s, Osama left Saudi Arabia and moved to Sudan. During his time there, he invested money in businesses, construction projects, and agriculture. But at the same time, he continued developing the network of Al-Qaeda. Throughout this period, Al-Qaeda slowly expanded its activities. Members of the organization began planning and supporting attacks against targets they viewed as enemies. By the mid-1990s, international pressure on Sudan increased because of concerns about extremist groups operating within its borders. Eventually, the Sudanese government forced Osama bin Laden to leave the country. In 1996, he returned to Afghanistan, where the Taliban had recently gained control of large parts of the country. The Taliban allowed Osama and his followers to live and operate there. Afghanistan once again became the center of Al-Qaeda's activities. From this safe haven, Osama bin Laden began releasing public messages and statements. In these statements, he strongly criticized the United States and its allies. In 1996 and again in 1998, he issued declarations calling for attacks against American military and civilian targets. These statements gained worldwide attention and increased concerns among international governments. Later in 1998, Al-Qaeda carried out one of its most deadly attacks up to that time, the 1998 United States Embassy bombings. 2 truck bombs exploded outside U.S. embassies in the cities of Nairobi and Dar es Salaam. The explosions killed more than 200 people and injured thousands. Most of the victims were civilians. After these attacks, the United States officially placed Osama bin Laden on its list of the most wanted individuals. Intelligence agencies around the world began focusing on finding him and stopping further attacks. However, Al-Qaeda continued to grow stronger and more organized during this time. And while governments were trying to stop the network, its leaders were secretly planning something even bigger. Within a few years, that plan would lead to one of the most shocking terrorist attacks in modern history, the September 11th attacks. Chapter 5: Planning the September 11th attacks. By the late 1990s, Osama bin Laden had become one of the most well-known leaders of militant extremism in the world. From his base in Afghanistan, where the Taliban controlled much of the country, he continued expanding the network of Al-Qaeda. During this period, leaders of Al-Qaeda began discussing a plan for a very large and dramatic attack against the United States. They believed that a powerful attack would attract global attention and show that their organization could strike even the strongest countries. One of the main planners involved in the operation was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He proposed an idea that was shocking and very unusual. Instead of using traditional bombs, the plan was to hijack passenger airplanes and use them as weapons. According to the plan, trained hijackers would take control of commercial airplanes and crash them into important buildings in the United States. These buildings were chosen because they were symbols of American economic, political, and military power. Osama bin Laden supported the idea. Over time, Al-Qaeda leaders began organizing the operation carefully. They selected individuals who would carry out the attacks and provided them with training. Many of the hijackers were recruited from different countries and secretly sent to the United States. Some of them attended flight schools to learn how to control airplanes. Others helped plan the logistics of the operation. The planning took several years. During this time, the hijackers tried to live normal lives in the United States so that they would not attract attention. They studied flight operations, learned how airports worked, and waited for the moment to carry out the plan. Finally, the day arrived. On the morning of September 11, 2001, 19 hijackers boarded 4 commercial airplanes departing from airports in the northeastern United States. Only minutes later, a second plane struck the south tower of the same complex. Millions of people around the world watched the events live on television as the towers burned and eventually collapsed. The attacks shocked and horrified viewers everywhere. At the same time, a third plane was flown into the Pentagon near Washington, D.C. A fourth plane was also hijacked, but passengers on board fought back against the attackers. During the struggle, the plane crashed into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania before reaching its intended target. In total, nearly 3,000 people lost their lives in the attacks. The September 11th attacks quickly became one of the most devastating terrorist events in modern history. Soon after the attacks, investigations by American and international intelligence agencies pointed toward Al-Qaeda. Evidence suggested that Osama bin Laden and his organization had planned and supported the operation. At first, bin Laden denied direct involvement, but later videos and statements connected him more clearly to the planning of the attacks. The events of September 11th changed the world dramatically. Governments strengthened security measures, intelligence agencies increased their operations, and international cooperation against terrorism expanded. For the United States, the attacks led to a massive military and political response. And for Osama bin Laden, the attacks made him the most wanted man on the planet. The search for him would soon lead to a global conflict known as the War on Terror, which would shape world politics for many years to come. Chapter 6: The Global Manhunt. After the devastating September 11th attacks, the world entered a new and uncertain period. Nearly 3,000 people had lost their lives, and the attacks shocked governments and citizens across the globe. Very quickly, attention turned toward Osama bin Laden and his organization, Al-Qaeda. The government of the United States demanded that those responsible for the attacks be brought to justice. At the time, Osama bin Laden was believed to be hiding in Afghanistan, where the Taliban controlled most of the country. The United States asked the Taliban government to hand over Osama bin Laden and dismantle the Al-Qaeda network operating within Afghanistan. However, the Taliban refused to surrender him. Because of this refusal, the United States and its allies decided to take military action. In October 2001, the United States launched a military campaign known as Operation Enduring Freedom. The goal of this operation was to destroy Al-Qaeda, remove the Taliban from power, and capture Osama bin Laden. American forces, along with soldiers from several allied countries, quickly entered Afghanistan. With the support of local Afghan forces known as the Northern Alliance, they began attacking Taliban positions across the country. Within a few months, many Taliban-controlled cities fell. Major cities such as Kabul were captured by anti-Taliban forces. The Taliban government collapsed, and many of its leaders fled to remote areas. During this time, intelligence reports suggested that Osama bin Laden and many of his followers had escaped into the mountainous region near the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. One of the most important battles of the early war took place in the mountains of Tora Bora in late 2001. U.S. forces believed that Osama bin Laden was hiding there with a group of loyal fighters. Heavy bombing and ground attacks were launched against the area. However, the mountainous terrain and complex cave systems made it extremely difficult to capture the remaining fighters. During this battle, Osama bin Laden managed to escape once again. His exact route of escape remains debated, but it is widely believed that he crossed into Pakistan with the help of supporters. After this escape, the hunt for Osama bin Laden became one of the largest manhunts in modern history. Intelligence agencies such as the Central Intelligence Agency and the Federal Bureau of Investigation worked with governments around the world to track him down. For many years, very little was known about his exact location. Occasionally, videos or audio recordings appeared in which bin Laden spoke about global events or criticized Western governments. These messages showed that he was still alive but gave few clues about where he was hiding. Meanwhile, the United States placed a huge reward on information leading to his capture. Posters, television broadcasts, and international announcements made his face known across the world. Despite all these efforts, Osama bin Laden managed to remain hidden for nearly a decade. The search involved satellites, intelligence networks, undercover agents, and cooperation between many countries. Yet the man who had planned one of the most devastating attacks in history remained out of reach. But intelligence agencies continued gathering information step by step. Eventually, one small clue about a trusted courier would lead investigators to a quiet compound in a city where no one expected him to be hiding. And that discovery would lead to the final mission that ended the long hunt for Osama bin Laden. Chapter 7: The Final Operation. For nearly 10 years after the September 11th attacks, the search for Osama bin Laden continued across many countries. Intelligence agencies worked day and night trying to locate the man who had become the most wanted fugitive in the world. For a long time, investigators had very little information about where he was hiding. Osama bin Laden avoided modern technology such as mobile phones and the internet because he knew these tools could be tracked. Instead, he communicated through trusted messengers known as couriers. Over time, intelligence agencies began focusing on finding one of these couriers. Officials from the Central Intelligence Agency believed that if they could track the courier, they might finally discover bin Laden's hiding place. After years of investigation, they identified a man who was believed to be one of bin Laden's closest messengers. Intelligence teams secretly followed this courier for months. Eventually, the courier led them to a large compound in the city of Abbottabad, located in Pakistan. The compound looked unusual compared to nearby houses. It had very high walls topped with barbed wire. The residents burned their trash instead of putting it outside for collection, and they avoided contact with neighbors. These strange behaviors made intelligence officials suspicious. They believed there was a strong possibility that Osama bin Laden might be hiding inside the compound. For several months, the United States carefully observed the building using satellites, drones, and intelligence teams. However, they still did not have absolute proof that bin Laden was there. Finally, the U.S. government decided to take action. The mission was planned as a secret military operation called Operation Neptune Spear. The operation was approved by Barack Obama, who was the president at the time. Only a small group of senior officials knew about the plan. On the night of May 1, 2011, a team of elite soldiers from the United States Navy SEALs flew from Afghanistan to Abbottabad using specially modified helicopters. Their mission was extremely risky. They had to enter another country secretly, locate the target inside the compound, and complete the operation within minutes. When the helicopters arrived over the compound, the soldiers quickly moved inside. During the operation, they searched the building room by room. Inside the compound were several people, including members of bin Laden's family and associates. After a brief confrontation, Osama bin Laden was located on the upper floor of the building. During the raid, he was shot and killed by the Special Forces team. The entire operation lasted only about 40 minutes. After confirming his identity, the soldiers collected important documents, computers, and storage devices from the compound. These materials were believed to contain valuable intelligence about Al-Qaeda and its activities. The team then left the compound and returned safely to Afghanistan. Soon after the mission was completed, President Barack Obama announced the news to the world. In a televised speech, he confirmed that Osama bin Laden had been killed during the operation. The announcement marked the end of one of the longest and most intense manhunts in modern history. For many people, the operation represented justice for the victims of the September 11th attacks. However, the fight against terrorism did not end with the death of Osama bin Laden. Al-Qaeda and other extremist groups continued to operate in different parts of the world. Still, the successful mission in Abbottabad became one of the most significant intelligence and military operations of the 21st century. And it brought a dramatic conclusion to the long pursuit of the man who had changed world history. Chapter 8: Legacy and Global Impact. The death of Osama bin Laden in 2011 marked the end of a long chapter in modern history. However, the impact of his actions, especially the September 11th attacks, continues to shape the world even today. The attacks changed global politics, security systems, and international relations in ways that few events in modern history have done. Governments around the world realized that terrorism had become a serious global threat that required international cooperation to fight. One of the most immediate changes happened in aviation security. Before 2001, airport security in many countries was much simpler than it is today. After the attacks, airports around the world introduced strict security procedures. Passengers now go through detailed screening processes, baggage scanning, and identity checks before boarding flights. In the United States, the government created a new agency called the Transportation Security Administration to strengthen airport security and protect travelers. The attacks also led to the launch of the global campaign known as the War on Terror. This campaign involved military operations, intelligence sharing, and international cooperation between many countries. One of the main goals of this campaign was to dismantle terrorist networks such as Al-Qaeda and prevent future attacks. As part of this effort, the United States and its allies launched military operations in Afghanistan, where Al-Qaeda had previously operated. The Taliban government, which had provided shelter to bin Laden, was removed from power during the early stages of the war. However, the conflict in Afghanistan continued for many years. The long war became one of the most complex and costly conflicts of the 21st century. Beyond military actions, governments also strengthened intelligence systems. Agencies such as the Central Intelligence Agency and the Federal Bureau of Investigation expanded their counterterrorism operations. Countries began sharing intelligence information more closely to track extremist groups and prevent attacks. New laws were introduced in several nations to monitor suspicious activities and financial networks connected to terrorism. The impact of Osama bin Laden's actions also affected global society. discussions about terrorism, security, religion, and international conflict became more common in political debates and media coverage. In many places, governments increased surveillance and security measures in public spaces such as airports, government buildings, and transportation systems. At the same time, the attacks also led to important discussions about human rights, international law, and the balance between security and personal freedom. Even after the death of Osama bin Laden during Operation Neptune Spear, extremist groups inspired by similar ideologies continued to appear in different regions of the world. Although Al-Qaeda weakened after losing its leader, it did not disappear completely. Various branches of the organization continued operating in parts of the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Historians and political analysts often study the life of Osama bin Laden to understand how global conflicts, political tensions, and extremist ideologies can develop over time. His story is often seen as an example of how one individual and one organization were able to influence world events on a massive scale. Today, the legacy of Osama bin Laden is remembered mainly through the tragic consequences of terrorism and the global efforts that followed to prevent similar attacks. For many people around the world, the events connected to his name serve as a reminder of the importance of peace, cooperation, and efforts to prevent violence and extremism in the future. The story of Osama bin Laden is not just about one man. It is about how ideology, conflict, and global politics can create events that change history. Understanding this story helps us understand the modern world and the importance of preventing extremism and violence. Because history is not only about the past, it is also about the lessons we carry into the future.